All right, I think we can go ahead and get started, and anyone else that slips in past the point will just have to watch the recording to see what they missed. If you guys want to go ahead and turn on your cameras and introduce yourselves.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Rudy Roda, State Director for Senator Bob Menendez.
Good morning. I am Noelle Ojo. I am the Division Lead for Development Programming and Partnerships at USAID. That's the Agency for International Development, based here in Washington, D.C.
Good morning. My name is Rockefeller Harris. I am a private enterprise officer based in Pretoria, South Africa, and I work with the Power Africa initiative.
Hey, awesome. Thanks, guys. I believe our first presentation today is what is USAID?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. As I mentioned, Noelle Ojo. I'm the Division Lead for Development Programming and Partnerships, which actually sits in USAID's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Office. And one of the things that we aim to do in my particular division is to speak with students and faculty and leadership about USAID and partnering with us. And there's many ways that we can partner. You can partner with us as a student, you can partner with us as an employee, you can partner with us as a contractor, a grantee, a lot of ways. But the presentation today that I'd like to share with you is really to give an idea and overview of just what is USAID. I certainly hadn't heard of it when I was 20 years old because it's incredibly outward facing, this agency, meaning that the majority and pretty much all of the work that we do is overseas. So many people in the United States just aren't aware of who we are. And we're on a mission to kind of change that because we want to get the best and brightest folks as well as ideas and relationships out there. So this presentation is really to go over who we are, what we do, and maybe try to convince you to come work with us as well. So we'll start here. We can start with the next slide. So what we are going to do, try to wrap this up in about 20 minutes, and then I'll have some question and answer opportunities. Who we are. Then we'll go to what we do, where we work, and then we'll have some Q&A. Next slide, please. So here's the kind of interesting things that we learn about the history of it. So in 1961, there was the Foreign Assistance Act that was passed by Congress and signed into law by President Kennedy. And it was to establish an agency devoted to economic and social development. So just remember around those times, there was a lot of movements around how do we help? How do we get everybody on track? War had recently finished. This is around the same time Peace Corps was founded. So USAID was established to further the United States foreign policy interest in expanding democracy, promoting free markets, and just to improve the lives of poor people in developing countries. We have a history as a nation of wanting to help and aid countries that may be a little further behind in the development process. So on November 3rd of 1961, USAID was born, and with it, the spirit of progress and innovation. Next slide, please. So what is USAID? Who is USAID? Well, we are the world's premier international development agency, and I'll define a little bit later what we mean when we say international development. And we're a catalytic actor driving development results. So we advance national security and economic prosperity. We demonstrate American generosity, and then we promote a path to recipient self-sufficiency and resilience. We don't want a situation where we may give money or do things, and then when we leave, things are right back to where they started. A lot of the things that we aim to do in the program and get involved is to figure out how can we make this long lasting? What do we need to do this so that these recipients of whatever we might be doing can carry this on for themselves. Next slide, please. So we have some core values. I won't read them word for word, but overview is that we have a passion for our mission. If you meet most people who work for USAID, we really like working here, and it means a lot to us, the work that we do. There's meaning in the work that we do. We subscribe to excellence. We want to give the best product whenever we can. integrity? Are we honest? Are we transparent? Are we accountable about the things that we do well, as well as the things that we don't do so well? There's always room for learning. The idea of respect for each other as employees, respect for the beneficiaries and the recipients of the people we work with, respect for our host nation and the countries we're working with. Empowerment. How do we always aim to empower people to have the individual voice to advance their own agenda. Inclusion. We want to make sure that when we're making projects and designs and engaging, that we aren't leaving anyone behind. Any of us, I mean, we live in the United States. We know what you have marginalized communities, people that don't have a voice. So we know what that looks like. And that happens everywhere in the world. So we aim to address those challenges. And then just a commitment to learning. We know that there's always room to learn, to grow, things change. How can we do things better? How can we do things different? And we build that into a lot of our programming and how we operate. Next slide, please. So our team, so you see in the darker blue, the lighter blue countries, the darker blue is where we actually have like a full mission. A lot of times we sit with the embassy. So if you know about, the US Embassy in every country, in every capital city, we're often co-located with them. If we're not sitting in that building, in the embassy building, like, so when I served in Senegal, I'm a foreign service officer as well. I need to probably mention that. I'm a democracy and governance officer. And so I've served with USAID in Dakar, Senegal, as well as Accra, Ghana. And actually the person who will speak later, Dr. Harris and I served together in Ghana. So you'll see where we actually have presence and we have a mission director. That's the highest ranking USAID development officer there in a country. And we have positions there. We have full staff in any of our missions. And even at the US Embassy, the ratio of like local hires, the people who are from those countries and work with us, is usually 5 to 1, 6 to 1. So which tells you that a lot of our work is driven by the people that are actually there. It's not us coming in telling folks what to do. It's more of us working together. So we have over 10,000 employees at USAID, and we serve in more than 100 countries. I'm going to have a quiz later about how many countries we're actually working in. USAID's workforce and culture serves as a reflection of core American values. That's our goal. And then we're rooted in the belief of doing the right thing. Do we get it right every single time? Probably not, definitely not. But that's always the goal. And that's where the learning and changing and adapting can come in. So you can see here, we have significant presence in the Africa region, both sub-Saharan and North African. We have a significant presence in Latin America and the Caribbean. We're in Eastern Europe primarily, and then a lot of parts of Asia, particularly Southeast Asia. We're not in China, we're not in Russia. At one point we were, but politics and history and social things change. Next slide, please. All right, so now we're going to go to what we do. Okay, you can go. Next slide. So I mentioned earlier, we talked about development. So we actually kind of have two different ways that we operate. We kind of operate on two tracks at USAID. So we have development assistance, and then we have humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. So with development assistance, we expand the opportunity to pursue a life that is secure and in which basic needs are met, right? Like, food, clothing, shelter, education, health, things like that. So the opportunity to create, innovate, and learn, the opportunity to build a better future. How do we, people are in need, they need help, and we come and we stay. So one of the things that happens and is unique about USAID and officers who work for USAID is that when we go out and we're assigned to a country, we stay for 4 years because you need to really be embedded and understand and spend time and get to know the place and understand the place, which I think is a beautiful thing. So like I mentioned, I served in Senegal. I was there for 4 years. Dr. Harris was in Accra for 4, maybe even longer, he can tell you. So we stayed for significant amounts of time in order to really understand and really be of value. Humanitarian assistance is like the immediate save lives. You want to alleviate human suffering and reduce economic and social impact. So where you would think of that is if you ever are watching like the news and there's a big earthquake. We had a huge earthquake in Morocco, I think it was last week. And you see the United States came out and they helped with this and they helped with that. That's USAID 9 times out of 10. We're certainly there. Military might be there as well. Other groups come in, but we are usually almost always the lead in some of that reactionary and the immediate what do we do to get food in there? How do we get water there? How do we kind of stop the bleeding for these like emergency situations? So USAID does that as well. Next slide. So there are certain sectors that we work in, and we transform these sectors. So the first is for providing humanitarian assistance. So that's what I just mentioned. We stand with communities around the world when disaster strikes. So, you know, remember the huge typhoon that happened in Indonesia, you name it, Haiti, earthquake, we were there, we're there. And we have like teams, they're called DART teams, that come out within, you know, 24 hours. People are on planes and they're out there. It's a really exciting aspect of what we do. Promoting global health. So it has been stated that, you know, USAID has played a huge role in reducing the number of deaths from malaria around the world. We've been working on that for decades. And there's some countries where it's nominal now, where it was really problematic in different points. So we do malaria, like different infectious diseases, maternal health, child, you know, newborn health, neonatal health, HIV/AIDS is a huge portfolio for us around the world. So health is a huge sector that we work in. Then supporting global stability, and this has to do with elections. This is like my bailiwick when we're talking human rights, you're talking elections, you're talking countering violent extremism, you're talking about budget fiscal accountability, things that allow for a country to be stable so that the people, the residents feel like the voices can be heard, that they're free from violence, that their voices, they can vote for who they want, and that person actually gets elected, things along those lines. Then empowering women and girls. That's a through line through all the work that we do. There are special challenges a lot of times for women and girls in many societies, in terms of them being marginalized, not supported, or quite honestly oppressed in many places. And so we do have a number of projects and initiatives aimed specifically at that population because they need that much more support. And then just catalyzing innovation and partnership. How do we work with other partners? We'll talk about that a little later in the presentation, about all the many people and groups that we partner with to get our work done and to make and to achieve these things. I should also mention that when we come into a country, we don't come in and say, well, this is what we think you need. We do what we call 5-year CDCSs. It's a country design strategic, like cooperative agreement. And what that is we work with the host nation and us, and we all sit down and say, okay, host nation, what are some of the things you hope to achieve, that you'd like to achieve, let's say in the next 5 years? Where do you want to have movement for your population? And 80-90% of the times is very similar. Like you'll have, you know, educated population, they want to focus on education, a healthy population, one where economic empowerment is around, there's opportunities for people to have economic growth and freedom, business opportunities to go to, you know, opportunities to have their own businesses, opportunities to be employed, things like that. So we do that in tandem with the country. We are there to help support their goals and missions, as long as it also aligns with US goals and missions. Next slide. So what kind of challenges can we address? So I mentioned some already, but food security. So if you have places where there is drought, so maybe there's no one event that has happened, but there's a slow moving event. There's a term for it. It's slipping my mind right now, but we can see it coming. You know, we know that there's going to be a drought, let's say in the next like year or two, based on weather patterns, et cetera. Desert is expanding. People have less food to eat. So if you look at water security, food security, water, you see in that second picture at the top, because of the lack of water, the cattle is dying. And so that's livelihood, that's food, that's economic growth, all of those things. Environmental factors, climate change is real. And you see it in different parts of the world in more extreme places. We're seeing it in the United States, but you can certainly see it in other parts of the world. And we aim to address those challenges. Energy, as mentioned, Dr. Harris actually works for Power Africa. Maybe he might touch on some of that when he does his presentation, but that's major, right? Like the more electrified a country is, there's a lot more room for progress. Urbanization, a lot of countries are struggling with, if all the business and industry is in your urban areas, as people grow and and come of age and they need opportunities, they are going to come to the cities and they're not necessarily able to support that. So how do you deal with that, to supporting the new folks that are coming? How do you try to start to take smaller cities and make them such that they're attractive to folks so that they can come and work and build a family and things like that, to start to strike where people go, so that you're not having only like 1 or 2 cities in the country have all the population, because that's never good for a society. It rarely is. Pandemic disease, we've all lived through COVID and the coronavirus, and there's different types of pandemics. We had the avian flu that has happened, that was a few years ago. Ebola, that was AIDS, was a very, very big part of where that our response. But we also have education. I've mentioned that. We have elections. We have agriculture issues. So there's really not much that we don't address, which is why I think it's a super cool place to work for and work with, because whatever your focus is, I don't care what your major is, there's a way to engage and be involved with us. So if you're a business major, we have a private enterprise track where you can, figure out how do you help societies get their businesses and get their business community up and running and stronger and things like that. If you're into the sciences, we have environment officers, we have engineering officers, all types of technical folks that work on some of these projects around environment, climate change, and things like that. If you are an attorney by profession, I happen to be one, and I'm in democracy and governance. There's rule of law projects and things like that. Elections, human rights. I had the human rights portfolio when I was in Dakar, and I worked on forced child begging. So whatever you're into, science, health, a lot of the people in our health bureau are MPHs. They have masters in public health or have a lot of public health experience. We have doctors and nurses on staff, researchers on staff. So whatever the challenge is, a lot of times we're there. Next slide. I wanted to actually ask y'all a question before this, but I forgot. So, but I will say this. Many people, like you'll hear, we're giving all this money overseas, and what are we doing in the United States? This is just the level set that only 1% of the U.S. budget goes to foreign aid, just 1%. So that's still a big 1%. It's almost $5 trillion, but it's just 1% when we look at the whole piece of the pie. And if you look at this, so our federal budget is 5 trillion. 19 billion goes out. So if you look at this 19 billion on the slide, the majority, as you can see, because I know I can't see you, so I don't know what you guys are seeing, but I mean, your reactions, but health is a large majority of it. That looks at least to be a third, not a little more. So health is huge. And then humanitarian assistance, that's what I was mentioning before, like those quick. So that takes up at least 55% when you look at all of that. And then shortly after that, just program management, like that's us making sure these programs are happening. Economic development is another big one. And in certain places, your economic development might center around agriculture, especially in a lot of developing countries. The big place to make money and where money moves the most is food, right? Because no matter what, everybody has to eat. And then in more developed countries, the economic growth changes. It might go to you're focusing on technology or, other ways that folks are making money, business and industry. So it can just depend on where that country is. That's the other thing about having your country specific strategy. It's specific to the country. So what we're doing in Ghana might look very different than what we're doing in Thailand and in Burma, which looks very different from what we might be doing in Colombia or Brazil. Next slide, please. So where and how we work. Let's go to that. So, okay, here's my quiz question. How many countries are we partnering with? Now we'll ask, I don't know if you all have the ability to enter anything in the chat. Can people see? Can people write in the chat? Okay, great. So go ahead and put in the chat what you think the answer is. I'd love to hear from you. Is it 78 countries, 116, 99, and 154? And I'll just say there are 195 recognized countries in the world right now. So we'll go with that. And let's see. Give it a couple of seconds. Okay, we got a couple of 154s. 116, 116. Okay, so everybody thinks it's at least 100. 154. Okay, y'all are good. Next slide. We partner with 154 countries. So you can see them on here. We have, so as I was mentioning before, you can see how we have them broken down. We have the darkest hue is where we actually have a full mission. We sit with the embassy, there's a mission director and then a full staff. And then, so you see the countries in the darker. The mid color, we have a development program where we might not have anybody, we might not have a full mission. So I can take, for example, like Cameroon. We have presence there, we have a couple of staff, but we don't have it's not a full mission. But we still work there, we have projects, and they will tend to be managed by a regional office. So you'll see here, you have regional offices in Barbados, El Salvador, Peru, Ghana, which is where Dr. Harris and I worked, Hungary, Kenya, Nairobi, Kazakhstan, Papua New Guinea, Thailand, Ukraine, South Africa, and Senegal. It's not on here, but our Sahel regional office is also a regional. So we had a Senegal office and a regional office. We both sat in Dakar. They just were a floor above us. Okay, next slide. Oh, don't go to the next slide. So where you see the lines, those are graduated countries. And what that means is we were working there, but then the countries kind of, their things have, you know, they graduated. They didn't need our assistance and they moved off. And so you'll see a couple of places sprinkled in there where that has happened in just about every region. So you see it in Latin America, you see it in Africa. I think there's just one in Africa. And then in Southeast Asia, and I think one in Eastern Europe. Yep, over there. So that's it. So that's an interesting thing about where we work. Next slide. So these are examples of our partners. We partner with international organizations like UN. When I was in Senegal, my implementing partner to help me do the human rights work was the United Nations Office of Drug and Crime. So we work together a lot with different agencies. We also have our counterparts and equivalents in different countries. So you have Australian aid, JICA, UK aid, GIZ, all of those countries. They're countries, or like the EU has their own development agency similar to what we do. Of course, we work with the host country governments. As I mentioned, we do those CDCSs together. And sometimes we even have employees that sit in those offices. You might sit in the Ministry of Health and do your work from there, because that's how closely integrated we are. Then we have global alliances and different big corporations like Coca-Cola, Walmart, Starbucks, Bayer, Pfizer. We work with all of them. Then other government agencies. So like our Health Bureau works with the CDC a lot and NIH a lot. Our environment folks work with our environment folks work a lot with like the Forest Service, et cetera. Our engineering folks might work with NASA. Our agriculture folks work with USDA. There's a lot of sharing of ideas and working together in this work. Then you have other development corporations. These are like private contractors that help us get the work done. Creative Associates, Abbott Associates, Tetra Tech, Chemonics. When you get into this industry, you'll see a lot of those names. And then we have nonprofits, other NGOs that you might have heard of, non-governmental organizations like Catholic Relief Services, Mercy Corps, World Wildlife Fund, Save the Children. All of those places, a lot of times they work with us as well. Sometimes as implementing partners, sometimes to help us do research. And then of course, universities. So we hope that we can start to establish some relationships with some of the universities that we're working with here. But you have, we have contracts and grants and things with like Texas A&M, Columbia, Howard University, Michigan State, Harvard. I know we have some stuff with Johns Hopkins. So that's all the fun stuff that we have. Next slide. So there are opportunities for students and graduates. I am not the person, I don't sit in our HR office, but I wanted to at least give you this to learn about, because they are going to come in 2 weeks. As you know, there's another event we're going to do like this one on October 2nd, same time. The links, I think you all have an opportunity to register. We're going to have someone from our human capital talent management which is basically like our human resources division or arm bureau. And they're going to go through the different ways you can work with us, the internships, how to find jobs, how to intern. We have a virtual student internship program that is paid. We have different fellowships that are coming up. The one we like to tout right now that's open and closes at the end of October is the Payne International Fellowship, which is a really cool fellowship for those who are graduating soon or recent graduates, where we'll pay for 2 years of your grad school, fully funded up to about $54,000 now. And then when you finish, like in the summers, you do one summer with us in Washington, you do another summer at a mission overseas, and then when you graduate, you come in as a Foreign Service officer. So it's an excellent program. We like to have a lot of, and Donald Payne is a New Jersey representative, and he started the program. So special, affiliation there. So I'll leave it at that. I'll open it up for questions for a couple of questions here and there, and then we'll move on to Dr. Harisa's presentation. But I did want to see if there were any questions. You can put it in the chat or in the Q&A box. And I guess next slide is my thank you, but you can leave this slide up, Nicholas, because I think, oh, sorry, do go to the next slide because my email address is there. And my colleague, Dana Alzuma, who works with me, if you have questions, feel free. That's nojo@usaid.gov and Dana Alzuma, DALZOUMA @usaid.gov. And then I guess we can go back to the other slide just in case people want to jot down if they want to go to the career section. But do I have any questions? Correct. Yeah, it's going to be recorded, put on YouTube. And when we put it on YouTube, we'll have some of the links live and active as well. Oh, okay. So Lauren, I see thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the presentation. Funny enough, I studied business administration. I went to Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida, studied business administration, actually did a 5-year MBA, and then I went to law school. Back up in your area, I went to New York University School of Law, and then I graduated, took the bar, passed, but then I joined the Foreign Service immediately. And so that's what I've been doing ever since. I was with State Department. I served in Lagos, Nigeria, in Cameroon, and then did some other stuff in life, some federal work, some private sector work. I worked at Howard University for a little while, and then I came back into the Foreign Service on the USAID side, and then came in as a democracy and governance officer. So I've been with USAID about 7 years now. So you can have almost any background and come and join us. Though I will say for Foreign Service officers, most will require a master's degree. I think they pretty much all do for Foreign Service officers. I think so, especially the technical officers. Now, on the civil service side, where you're primarily usually based in Washington, you can come in at various levels because we do all types of things. So yeah, that's my background and kind of how I got here. So yeah, in 1961, it was founded by Kennedy, President Kennedy. And what is ROI? You mean like return on investment? I'm not sure what ROI, if you're referring to that, but that's like an investment term. Like you put in X amount after so many times, what percentage you came back? I think that's what you're asking. What job opportunities? So all types of opportunities, whether you want to come in as an officer or technical officer in, let's see, nonprofit leadership and development. If you wanted to focus on, let's see, I mean, that's a very broad, I mean, the good thing is it's very broad, right? Like in what you want to do. So you might want to focus more in terms of what you, like your technical expertise or technical area. So did you want to focus on education? Did you want to focus on human rights and elections, and or did you want to focus on agriculture or enterprise development, economic growth? And you can pick there. But the jobs come up online at USA Jobs. That's how you find jobs with us. But I think coming as a student or first, like fresh out of school, there are some programs. And like I said, in 2 weeks, my colleague who works in that division is going to come and share more. But I would actually start with if you look at the slide that's there now, go to usaid.gov/careers. And they do really break down the different ways that you can come and join us, and what types of work that you can do. And then there is a link also about the internships, but in 2 weeks, she's going to kind of deep dive into how to do that and how it works and what it looks like. But I would definitely start with these websites and pretty much, and if you even have like a business background and you want to work back office for us, we have contracting officers, we have business management officers, we have what we call executive officers who manage our HR, our IT programs, all of that also at the embassy. So all types of work to be done and all types of opportunities available. Okay, I'm going to move on to Dr. Harice's presentation and allow introduce.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to turn it over to Rudy, who has some words. He's the Senator's state director. So if Rudy, if you're ready, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Rudy Rodas. I'm the state director for Senator Bob Menendez, who is the senior senator for New Jersey. He also serves as the Senate Foreign Relations Committee's first Latino chairman. As some of you may know, in his capacity as chairman, Senator Menendez has launched a series of legislative and other efforts to ensure Americans of all backgrounds, ethnicities, and socioeconomic levels have the opportunity to serve our country at home and abroad. This not only includes paid internships for students in the Senator's New Jersey, Washington, D.C., or Senate Foreign Relations Committee offices, but also other opportunities. Only 2 weeks ago, the Senator's efforts resulted in Dr. Adriana Kugler being confirmed as the first person of Latino descent in 109 years to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. And today, as we usher in the start of Hispanic Heritage Month, I'm pleased to launch on behalf of the chairman a new initiative in cooperation with Nena Diallo, Chief Diversity Officer of USAID, a series of which you're experiencing right now, lunch and learns focused on international career and partnership opportunities with USAID for New Jersey students, faculty, and administrators. So on behalf of the Senator, thank you all for being here today. Thank you to USAID for this partnership and for bringing these resources to our state. I'll turn it over to the moderator now.
Okay, I'll use this opportunity. Thank you so much, Rudy. Always happy to know we have the support of Senator Menendez. He's been a true partner to us, particularly even in our office on the DEIA side. So we're really excited to have you represented today. I would like to introduce a friend and colleague, Dr. Rockfeller Harice, who was a Foreign Service Officer and Enterprise Officer who is currently working and based in Pretoria, South Africa, for our Power Africa initiative. And he's going to do this really awesome presentation called Deconstructing the Cashless Society Concept, the Pros and Cons of Technology on Economies. So Dr. Harice, I'm passing it over to you. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Counselor, I am always excited to hear your presentation because as a New Yorker, recruiting New Jerseyites must be fun for you because we try to recruit students from all over the United States, but it's probably particularly more interesting to recruit Northeasterners from New Jersey and New York area.
Very true.
I am very happy to be with you all this afternoon. I am going to be speaking about this concept of cashless society, which you all may have known something about or heard something about, but we want to give you a sense of what a foreign service officer would do. What are the types of programs that we do at USAID that hits home or that hits to a topic that you may be curious about, or you yourself may be at some point interested to participate in. At the time I was a civil servant, meaning I was working out of Washington, D.C., based in D.C. I worked with colleagues who were foreign service officers, and we were talking about how to make a program that reduces or removes the need for cash. Where we say we remove the need for cash is how can we make the market, the world, a place where cash is no longer needed, and we're using mostly either debit cards or vouchers or other systems. And now you all know about cryptocurrency. So anything other than cash. We were thinking about what is the best way to do that, and how do we introduce other systems of doing business transactions that would not require for people to have cash on hand. If we go to the next slide, please. So just a bit about myself. I am a Foreign Service officer now. I worked on the Better Than Cash Global Development Alliance back in the years ago, not to date myself here. I am a graduate of the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. I'm originally from Haiti, and I started my immigrant life in the great state of New York. So very pleased to be a neighbor of the New Jersey residents here, and professionals and students and college graduates, or soon to be college graduates, who are interested in careers in the Foreign Service. I went to University of Maryland Eastern Shore, Penn State, and received my doctorate degree from Michigan State University. Next, please. So this presentation on Better Than Cash or cashless societies will be in three prongs. One, well, I'll introduce to you the concept. We'll look at a short little video. Then we'll talk about the pros and the cons of cashless society, and then some things that we often don't mention when you hear about cashless societies. And maybe that would be an area where some curiosity or some questions could come up from the audience. Next, please. So if you'll play the slide, I'll stay quiet, and as you listen to the presentation, this little short video on this concept of Better Than Cash.
Right. Let me know if you guys have any trouble hearing it.
I think in today's modern world, it's hard to imagine what it would be like to carry only cash and to have only cash.
There are significant sums of money flowing from governments and development organizations in the form of distribution of benefits. If we were to transition these programs to distributing these benefits in the form of electronic payment, we have the opportunity to bring this population into the financial mainstream.
We know that electronic transfers work. When those payments go to banks, people save. It might only be 50 cents, it might only be $1, but they save. Did people take those savings and build businesses? But also for corporations. There are many businesses that work with communities that are hard to reach through the traditional banking system. So if you think of those who are buying from small farmers and producers in rural areas, mobile bankings will allow them to make payments electronically and instantly.
In parts of Afghanistan, we've seen that shifts to electronic payments can actually help reduce fraud and waste, and thereby improve the actual salaries that Afghan police officers receive.
If you look at the experiences in Haiti after the earthquake, electronic vouchers and mobile money were used to get payments to people quickly. People who received electronic transfers got their resources 3 days ahead of others.
The benefits of shifting to electronic payments are multiple. It decreases costs of the transactions. It also promotes transparency and accountability in the flow of capital. And it's also a safer way for recipients to access money.
To transition from cash to electronic requires a lot of technical support, coordination amongst many government agencies and the banking infrastructure and the mobile money infrastructure working together to make sure that this happens.
These kinds of technological transformations don't happen easily. But for these cash transfers to happen, the backbone has to exist.
In many parts of the world where economies are developing and populations are in the greatest areas of need, electronic payments are not migrating fast enough because you're not seeing the right blend of government, NGO, and private industry partnership.
The Better Than Cash Alliance is partnership between governments, non-governmental organizations, and businesses who believe that creating an electronic financial services infrastructure for the poor can greatly improve their lives.
We hope the Alliance will help amplify the opportunity that's there
for many, many more people to be reached through formal access of financial services.
The Better Than Cash Alliance will offer technical assistance. There will also be a system of peer-to-peer learnings where governments who have already transited to electronic transfers will bring their knowledge and experience to the governments who are starting the process.
Eventually, the transition from cash to electronic payments will have massive social impact.
And if we can commit to moving our payments onto these types of more modern systems, we can really be the tip of the arrow, helping an entire industry shift the way it does its work. We can start to help billions of people move out of extreme poverty.
So we could go to the next slide as we talk about the way that the world, the market, the nonprofit sector, the donor sector, as well as the private sector, are all viewing this concept of being in a cashless society. We heard about the idea that the convenience factor. We talked about we heard about the ability to reduce fraud. There were the examples in Afghanistan. There was a situation in Haiti after the earthquake. A lot of these, I would tell you, are very much more glowing than the actual scenario of what happened on the ground. So here you are given an opportunity to hear about concepts that happen in development. And when you get into the space of being a development agent, a humanitarian assistance worker, someone who's working in democracy and governance, someone who's working in agriculture or in health, you get to apply some of these development principles that you may have learned in school or that you may have encountered during your normal working day. So we are trying to propose a concept or approach whereby in the society, you're not using cash. You don't have to queue up at a bank to go and get money because usually there's a crisis, there's something going on, there's no cash in the country. And so you're giving another means of having doing your financial transaction. Next slide, please. But those come with some disadvantages, right? There is this idea that one, you don't have any cash in hand. If there are no systems, no platform, no energy, there's no power, the grid is down, how are you going to swipe your card? What would you do if there is no one there to process your credit card or your debit card or your electronic transfer, and the goods that you need are an urgent need or an urgency? There's been scenarios where, for example, someone would come in and take the cards, like gift cards, for example, take all the cards away and swipe them. And the person who's supposed to be holding the card, who has the key to the card, is not able to access the information, is not able to access the card because the cards have been taken away. Or then you have instances where by the time that the person who's received the card is able to go and do the transaction, the shelf life of the card has already expired. Or maybe there's a hacker who comes in, gets involved, and takes all the information away from the data set where the funds are located. You have the card, but there's no funds in the card. Next, please. So in the concept of what really happens within the cashless economies, we have the fact that what we often don't see or don't hear about is that though it's very efficient for the transactions to be done when you have the card, those efficiencies are not necessarily transferred on or passed on to the consumer or the clients. We talked about the risks, but sometimes beyond the risk is that when we have a shock, what we call in economics a shock in the community, whether it be a natural disaster or a man-made disaster caused by an attack, terrorist attacks, or war, you cannot really pivot from having gone directly to a cashless society to now needing cash on hand. Because when you make that switch to going to cashless, you're saying you're committed to not using cash. You're committed to using the electronic versions of cash that now you going back and forth is really not practicable. Older generations, for example, have difficulty with this transition because it requires them to learn new skills or use technology that they're not quite familiar with. So they never adopted the technology, they never adopted the use of literacy or numeracy. Then getting them to now convert to a technology-based system is very challenging and risks at ostracizing a very large segment of your, or important segment of your society, of your community. And then, of course, lastly, we have this concept of this disparate nature of the disparate nature of technology. It's not everywhere. You may have the capital city having access to the technology, but yet in the rural areas, you don't have the technology, you don't have the resources. So therefore, you're going to have a polarizing effect or disenfranchise people within your community because of this development trend that you brought into it. So this is an example of some programs that we do at USAID. We wanted to give you an example of work that we do, as well as career tracks. This is the type of work that would be from someone who majored in economics or in business or economic policy. And you would be able to work on a specific program looking at the policy element, the technical element, the engineering or innovation element of that technology, so that you could be a gainful member of a team working at a U.S. mission. So I'll stop here and see if there are any questions or comments for clarification from the audience. Over.
Okay, I'm not sure that there are any questions in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and show our final slide here. Give me just 1 second. And this is our final slide on the committee side. If Misha would like to say something.
Really quick, sorry, before you
Look, oh,
just
sorry.
pop up.
Go ahead, Noel.
I'm just seeing a question popped up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that one.
Do we work in building infrastructures to support the work?
Yes, we do have construction programs. The infrastructure work that we do is mostly in the energy infrastructure, but we do provide some technical support for other types of infrastructure. For example, where we may be involved with some renovations of health centers, the electrification of health centers. Sometimes we work we provide funding for road construction. We did a road construction program that really improved the lives of people in the rural areas of Liberia. We worked on the power grid in Afghanistan and Pakistan, Tajikistan, very effective work in India in the infrastructure space. So yes, engineers, electrical engineers, environmental engineers, all those professions have great career opportunities within the agency. Over.
I just wanted to say thank you. I think that's the last. So I'll have a quick, just the other version of infrastructure support for that. Do we do anything to support when we were talking about when as it relates to cashless societies? do we help countries or systems to build in some resilience to that? So, like, for example, when you were mentioning if there's a power outage, how are we getting around that? Like, are we able to help them build systems to allow for the cashlessness to better be utilized?
Yeah, I think what we do in many instances is we co-create. That's first and most important thing. We co-create with the local community to understand what are the very most important needs, what are their most prescient needs in terms of how to deal with the shocks. The shocks being whether there's a power outage, whether there is an earthquake, floods, hurricanes that come through. We provide direct humanitarian assistance where we come in and we pre-position some certain goods that provide relief. In those instances, we say do not send the goods, that cash is best because it allows us to get the resources that's needed to get the economy started again. And in those instances, if there is no power there, we are able to bring in energy, immediate energy solutions, whether it be by via solar or solar powered generators. We're able to help get those technologies directly into the communities immediately as part of our Office for Transitional OTI, Office for
It's transition initiatives, right?
Transition initiatives. Thank you. The I was escaping me. So that office is our colleagues who only respond to immediate disaster relief types of programs. But we also are working with communities so that they could build up their own resilience, and they create systems that allow them to overcome these shocks whenever it is that they may be facing with those types of issues. So Counselor, there are other questions with regards to qualifications, foreign service, and getting to being a foreign service officer that you may want to address.
Yeah, and I think what I'll have to do is, as I mentioned earlier, our human resources folks are coming on for their next assignment. That's in there. I mean, I could answer, but they are the experts on the hiring and the onboarding. So that will be coming up. In the meantime, I really think for those types of general questions, I know that a lot of those questions are actually answered on the www.usaid.gov/careers page. So definitely check that out in terms of the qualifications for foreign service officers, because it does vary depending on the type of officer you want to be. Certain officers are going to need certain types of degrees, et cetera. There's no one answer. And then we absolutely do have accommodations for people with disabilities. It's actually a population that we actively recruit because we do want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to participate with us. But the best thing I think is if you're really interested in joining us, either as an intern or as an employee, definitely come and check out the session that we're going to have on October 2nd. Same time, come on a Zoom, and we have our human resources person there who will address all of those questions. All right, thank you, Dr. Harris, and then I'll pass it now to Dr. Thompson, who I think wants to say some final words on behalf of Senator Menendez's office. Thank you.
So Noel, Dr. Harris, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I am Dr. Misha Thompson, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee's first Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Director, appointed by Chairman Menendez. I hope everyone enjoyed today's presentation. Please do not hesitate to reach out to our office or the speakers today should you require any additional information on what you heard, and whether, I would say also, if you are seeing the slide in front of you, whether you are interested in an internship working with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. In addition to myself, I also just wanted to note that we have others on our staff who focus specifically on USAID and can also be resources for persons interested in careers in both Congress and USAID. And those colleagues are Josh Klein and Julia Greensfelder. They lead on those issues at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Our contact email can be found on the top of this slide, which is sfrc_info@foreign.senate.gov. And we hope that in addition to today, you will join us in a couple of weeks on October 2nd, when we will be holding 2 simultaneous lunch and learns. One will be for students focused on career opportunities, and a second will be for faculty and administrators on partnership opportunities. So don't forget to register at the link on the flyer and in the emails that has been sent around. And for those of you who are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, don't forget to join us on September 24th in New Jersey for a wonderful afternoon honoring trailblazers in the community. Look for an invitation in your inbox if you haven't received one already. Have a great afternoon.
All right, guys, at this time, I'm going to close down the Zoom, but this will be posted later today to Senator Menendez's YouTube page. So if you need any problem or have any problems, you want to get the resources, get the slides, any of that, that will all be available later today. So once again, thank you guys all for coming. Thank USAID, thank the committee, the personal office for all the hard work that they put into this. And I hope to see you guys all on October 2nd. All right. All right. Bye-bye, guys.